Hi everyone, and welcome back to the channel. Thank you to everyone that's liked, subscribed, commented. Please keep them coming, please keep them flowing. In today's video, what I'd like to do is take you all back in time, back to 2012 to be precise. So we'll get in the TARDIS, get the flux capacitor, get the DeLorean, and we're going to go back into time to 2012 because that is when this car here, this Range Rover Sport, was brand new. So we're going to sort of go back to new car day for whoever had new car day for this car. So of course it's 2025 now, it's 13 years into the future, but we're going to sort of imagine that we have been to the showroom, we've done the paperwork, might have part exchanged our previous car, but now here we are sat in our Range Rover Sport SDV6 HSE model. So I'm going to pop the engine on. You can't see the button, but we'll pop the engine on and we'll go for that drive. Let's take the parking brake off. So let's just have a quick recap on this car. So the 3-litre SDV6 engine, which produces around 255 horsepower, which is pretty good. In terms of weight though, it's got 2.5 tons roughly to move, so bit of a weight there for it. 0 to 60 comes in 8.5 seconds, which feels pretty reasonable given the height that we're at in the car, and there's something to the order of 600 newton meters of torque. This car here as well is one of the last of this shape L320s. So this, being a 2012 model, has the 8-speed gearbox with the rotary that's just down there rather than the stick. And I think whilst we go for a drive in the Range Rover Sport, maybe we'll just have a bit of a short recap on the Sport model, which was brought out roughly 2005, but prior to that Land Rover produced a concept car which they called the Stormer model, which shared quite a few styling cues really for what was to come with this car, with this Range Rover Sport. Of course, ultimately Sport didn't end up looking exactly like it. It wasn't until Land Rover got to the Evoque that they pretty much produced a mainstream car that was a concept car. But the Stormer is where it began, and the Range Rover Sport arrived around 2005 with the options engine-wise of a 2.7 V6 diesel with the supercharged petrol, and I believe with the 4.4 V8. Then had a facelift where we moved on to the 3-litre diesel, and where also, eventually, let's think about this, maybe around 2006 the 3.6 TDV8 came out. If that's a little wrong, feel free to pop a note down below. And that's really where the Sport's at. But what we end up with here is one of the last of them, and driving it is very nice, it's very easy. I'm just going to set the cruise control on there. We've got the adaptive cruise control, so if there's anything in front, if we catch anything up, we'll slow down. If that speeds up, then we'll do exactly the same. Now I should note with this car as well, we're on 88,000 miles, just over. So it's quite a low mileage for its age. It's averaged something just under 7,000 miles a year. And I did have a little thought with this car, which at the time seemed like a great idea, but then I thought it through. And that was, can I get this car to 250,000 miles? What will be involved in terms of timescale, in terms of keeping the car on the road? Because I also have a 330D, which is now on close to, if not a spot over, 130,000 miles that I want to get to 250,000, and that car is the daily driver. That's the one that's used day in, day out. And I think the reality of having two cars and needing to put collectively, let's see, 120, 160, so 280,000 miles into them is probably a stretch too far. So maybe what we'll do with this Sport is keep it to 100,000 miles and just keep a track of what's involved, maintenance, so on and so forth with it. So we're on 88,000 miles. That gives us about 12,000 miles. Realistically, that might take again a little longer than I think. Why not have thought this through? Well, let's do it. There we are. Car's pulled out in front of us. The adaptive cruise control slows down. So that's wonderful. So we're now on a bit of dual carriageway. So we'll get ourselves up to speed limit 70 miles an hour. We're there. We'll push the buttons to do so. There we are. So up to 70 miles an hour. It's very quiet in here. I can hear a bit of road noise, a bit of wind noise. Can hear a little bit of the engine, but we're doing about 1700 revs, so the engine's not really having any efforts. It's quite an easy run really for it, and we're just going to, let's get the cruise control back in. We'll just slow down there. Just not really a great deal of effort for the engine there. 1700 revs, and we're just hooted along this dual carriageway. Driving position's brilliant. I might close the sun visor. It's such a great view from inside these. This will be at full size Range Rover. It's such a great view. You can see everywhere. I think it's called something like the command driving position of the captain's chair, and it does do exactly that. Thinking more about the history of this car, some people might have said, oh, you've not mentioned Discovery. And some might say, why are you mentioning Discovery? So I think a lot of folk out there will know that the Range Rover Sport is much like a Discovery. It's a body on top of a chassis, but bolted together. And the chassis for the Range Rover Sport is from the Discovery 3, albeit with some changes, because they're not quite the same length, and of course Discovery does have those rear seats. Now, whilst we're on a Discovery chassis, I think it's probably key to note as well, when the Sport came out, from Land Rover's point of view, they had the full-size Range Rover, and that was a car that had really sort of held its own for a number of years. But other brands were coming to the market. They wanted to invade that space, and they brought their own vehicles out. And I'm thinking of the likes of the Mercedes ML, and of course the BMW X5, which in no part is due to BMW's ownership of Land Rover and learning a lot of tricks of the trade, if you like, a lot of the understanding of the engineering, performance and the capabilities of a 4x4. So from Land Rover's point of view, they've got these competitors, and I mentioned those two. There will be others, but I mentioned those two because they brought a different sort of a dimension. They brought a vehicle that on road had quite a good performance, a more sportier performance. Perhaps it would hold the road better, it would go around corners better, and perhaps they weren't the best off-road, but they were for the on-road. So from the point of view of the Range Rover Sport, this is here to provide that. It's here to provide the better handling on the road, to provide perhaps the more sportier looks that the Range Rover didn't necessarily have. It was perhaps more of a stately vehicle, albeit you could get kits like Overfinch and others to go on. But for Range Rover Sport here, the sporty element was where it's at. When the replacement came out, the L494, there were a lot of folk that did comment that finally, oh, there's a Sport that is sporty. But what we're sat in dates back to something in the early noughties. And for me, I clearly think they got it right because I have one. And it is, of course, as I always say, a joy to drive. We're just pootling here through a 30 mile an hour limit. And again, can't really hear a great deal. We're doing just over 1200 revs. So the engine's not really having to do much stress. I just want to have a look and see what we're doing to the gallon. So we're getting, it says 36 to the gallon. I better confess though, we are going downhill. Of course, if we're going uphill, those numbers would come down. Let's get towards some country roads and let's have a bit more twist and a bit more turn. Here we are then, country roads, and the Sport feels absolutely fine. There's twists, there's turns, there's undulation, it's a bit of a steep drop here, and anyone that's driven country roads a lot will know that there's not a lot of width in them, but there's usually enough space to get two cars to pass in something that looks like it only has the width for a moped. But along we go on these twisty, turny countryside roads. Great seating position, great responsiveness to the engine and the gearbox. I don't think it's going to be a Le Mans winner, but it does do it all admirably. What's also nice with the Range Rover Sport, and I think I mentioned this in the first video on the car, is that we do have good old-fashioned dials in the car, but there's also, and if we're looking particularly at the dash binnacle, there's also the TFT screen as well in the centre, so that has your onboard computer, your temperature, your clock. But it's nice to have the dials for the rev counter, and of course the dial for the speedo. In my supercharged Range Rover, that will have the full TFT screen in the front for all of those items, but you still get the sense of the dials, which I personally prefer. I think it makes a difference having those lovely looking dials in there. And one thing I really noticed is I'm sat here in absolute comfort. Have I noticed comfort? No, I think I've noticed no discomfort. That's what I've noticed. But we do, we just sit here in absolute comfort. We are the king of the road, and I look forward to doing more miles with this car. The aim is the 100,000 mark, so we've got 11,900 miles to go. So here we go. This is proof in the pudding. Countryside lanes. There we are. That van just goes by like there's all the width of a 3-lane motorway, if not more. So we've got 11,900 miles to go to get to that 100,000 miles. And what I'll do is I'll just produce every now and then an update video, which might be as short as in 3 months' time. It might be as long as in a year. It might make more sense actually to do a year, because then we have got a good assessment of the realities of having and running the car for that period of time, seeing what the maintenance is. Of course, they're famed for the R word, so let's see if we can dispel, debunk any myths around that, and enjoy driving the Range Rover Sport, which I'm going to continue doing. For now though, I'll say thank you very much for watching. If you like the video, please give it a thumbs up, please give it a subscribe, and please comment below. But for now, we'll say thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you next time. Cheerio.